Your cancer is no reason to ruin your mother's anniversary. You're not dying yet, said her husband, withdrawing money for treatment from Xenia's account to pay for her mother-in-law's banquet. At the celebration, the mother-in-law boasted about a necklace worth 300,000 until she received a message from an unknown number. And before we continue, please let us know which country you are watching from. Enjoy listening. Xenia felt the world around her slow to a crawl. The doctor's words echoed in her head like a sinister refrain. You have cancer. She sat in the sun-drenched office, but everything around her seemed gray and lifeless. She tried to inhale, but her chest felt like it had formed a vacuum. Cancer. How was this possible? She, Xenia, who had always watched her health, exercised, and was full of plans for the future. Leaving the hospital, Xenia mechanically took out her phone. Alexei. She desperately wanted to hear his voice, to feel his support as it had always been before, but something inside told her that things would be different now. Honey, I have news, she said, trying to keep her voice from trembling. I'm in a meeting, Ksusha. I'll call you back later. Alexei cut her off and hung up. Xenia lowered her phone. The coldness stung more than the diagnosis. She had always been secondary to him, after his work, his friends, and most importantly, his mother, Irina Petrovna. But now, when she needed him so desperately, it felt especially acute. Mustering her strength, Xenia decided to act. She understood that the treatment would be long and expensive. She hadn't yet decided to tell Alexei everything. She felt that it wouldn't bring relief now, so she decided to open a separate medical account where she planned to save money for treatment. She transferred all her savings there, some of the money gifted to her for the wedding, and decided to take on extra work tutoring in the evenings. At first, Alexei showed concern, asking about her well-being, offering help around the house, but Xenia sensed the falseness in his words. His care seemed forced, as if he were fulfilling an obligation. Soon, his attention shifted. Mom's anniversary is coming up, Alexei said one evening at dinner. She wants a grand celebration, a restaurant, performers, everything as it should be. Xenia nodded, trying not to show her feelings. She knew how much Alexei adored his mother, how he tried to please her in everything. Irina Petrovna was an imperious and self-centered woman, accustomed to getting everything she wanted. She had always disliked Xenia, considering her not good enough for her son. Talk of her mother-in-law's anniversary grew more frequent. Alexei enthusiastically recounted the upcoming celebration, the expensive restaurant, the fashionable performers he was planning to invite. Xenia listened with growing anxiety. She understood that such parties required enormous sums of money, and she wondered where he would get it. One day, going to the bank to top up her medical account, Xenia requested a statement for all her accounts. The bank employee, smiling kindly, handed her a printout. Xenia mechanically scanned the figures, and suddenly her gaze caught a suspicious transaction. A large sum of money. Almost all that was in her medical account had been transferred to Alexei's account. Her heart began to pound wildly. Xenia reread the statement, hoping it was a mistake, but no, it was exactly as she had seen it the first time. Her money, the money set aside for treatment, had vanished. Alexei had taken it. She left the bank as if in a dream. Her legs wouldn't obey, her head was spinning. She couldn't believe what had happened. How could Alexei do such a thing? How could he steal her money, knowing she needed it to fight her illness? Returning home, Xenia found Alexei in excellent spirits. He was sitting at the computer, engrossed in something. "Hello, honey," Ksenia said, trying to remain calm. "I need to talk to you." "I'm busy, Kashusha." "Wait a moment," Alexei replied, not looking up from the screen. "It's urgent," Ksenia insisted. She took the bank statement from her bag and handed it to Alexei. "Explain to me what this means." Alexei took the statement and scanned the lines. His face gradually changed. First he looked surprised, then bewildered, and finally guilty. It's a mistake," he mumbled, looking away. "What mistake?" Ksenia exclaimed. "You transferred my money to your account. Why?" Alexei remained silent. He lowered his head and avoided her gaze. Xenia felt a wave of anger and despair rising within her. "Answer me!" she shouted. "Why did you need my money?" Alexei sighed heavily and looked up at Xenia. There was not a trace of remorse in his eyes. "You see, Ksiush, Mom really needs this anniversary. She's done so much for me. I can't let her down, and I don't have enough money right now. I wanted to borrow from you." "Yes, and then I'd pay you back." "Borrow?" Xenia couldn't believe her ears. "You stole the money I saved for treatment and call it a loan? Do you even understand what I'm facing? That I need this money to survive?" Alexei shrugged. "Well, you're not at death's door yet," he remarked cynically, "and Mom's anniversary is a once-in-a-lifetime event." These words were the last straw. Xenia felt something inside her break. She could no longer hold back her tears. She cried from pain, from resentment, from betrayal. She cried for her destroyed life, for her unfulfilled dreams, for her lost love. Alexei silently watched her breakdown. There was no sympathy or compassion in his eyes, only irritation. Xenia realized that any outburst would now bring Alexei pleasure. She needed time to think everything through, to plan her next steps. "Okay, Ilyosha," she said in a steady voice. "If that's how it is, then so be it. The anniversary." "Yes, the anniversary." After the conversation with Alexei, Xenia withdrew into herself. She barely ate, barely slept, as if she had become a shadow. Her thoughts were consumed by one thing: how to avenge the betrayal, how to get back the stolen money, how to survive this situation. She knew she would have to fight alone, but that only gave her strength. Irina Petrovna's anniversary was approaching. Alexei, as if nothing had happened, was running around shops, choosing gifts, ordering catering. He glowed with happiness, anticipating the luxurious celebration. Xenia watched him with disgust. She wanted to tell him everything she thought of him, but she restrained herself. She knew her time would come. A few days before the anniversary, Irina Petrovna, radiant with anticipation, came into Xenia's kitchen. She was in a new dress with styled hair and bright makeup. "Ksenietska," she cooed, "Alexei has prepared such a gift for me. It's just a fairy tale. A diamond necklace for 300,000. Can you imagine?" She twirled in front of Xenia, showing off her new adornment. At that moment, Xenia felt a surge of fury. She looked at her mother-in-law, at her pleased face, and realized she could no longer remain silent. But instead of saying everything, she just smiled and said, "It's a very beautiful necklace, Irina Petrovna. It suits you very well." After her mother-in-law left, Xenia took out her phone. She knew she had to act quickly and decisively. First, she contacted Dennis, her friend and colleague. She told him everything that had happened, without hiding a single detail. Dennis was shocked by what he heard. He had always considered Alexei a decent person, but now he realized how wrong he had been. "Ksiusha, I'm with you," he said. "I'll help you in any way I can." Then Xenia called Irina Vlasova, her longtime friend, who worked as a lawyer. Irina was known for her professionalism and incorruptibility. Xenia knew she could trust her. Irina listened attentively, asked a few clarifying questions, and promised to help. "We'll make him pay, Ksiusha," she said. "He'll answer for everything." Together with Dennis and Irina, Xenia began preparing for Irina Petrovna's anniversary. She understood that this was her chance to expose Alexei, get back the stolen money, and start a new life. She gathered evidence, took photos, recorded conversations. She transformed into a true detective, driven by the idea of justice. Xenia photographed the necklace on her mother-in-law's neck, made copies of the bank statements confirming the transfer of money from her account to Alexei's. She also recorded a conversation with Alexei on her dictaphone in which he confessed to the theft. Every detail was important. Every piece of evidence could play a decisive role. Irina, as an experienced lawyer, developed a clear strategy. She explained to Xenia how to properly file a police report, how to get a criminal case initiated, how to recover the stolen money. She also warned Xenia about possible difficulties and risks, but Xenia was ready for anything. She knew she had to fight to the end. Dennis, in turn, supported Xenia morally. He encouraged her, listened to her anxieties, gave advice. He became a true pillar of support for her during this difficult period. He also helped Ksenia spread information about her story on social media. He created an anonymous account where he posted photos and documents proving Alexei's guilt. He knew that public opinion could play a significant role in this matter. Ksenia prepared for the anniversary as if for a real battle. She knew she would have to face Alexei and his mother, but she was not afraid. She was ready for any turn of events. She believed in her righteousness and knew that justice would prevail. On the day of the anniversary, Ksenia woke up with a sense of anxiety. She understood that her fate would be decided today. She put on her best dress, did her makeup and hair. She wanted to look strong and confident. She left the house and headed to the restaurant where the celebration was to take place. The celebration was held in an expensive restaurant. Guests, dressed in their finest attire, were loudly discussing the latest news. Irina Petrovna, beaming with happiness, received congratulations and compliments. She was the center of attention, just as she had always dreamed. She wore the very necklace worth 300,000, essentially stolen from Ksenia. When Ksenia entered the hall, she was met by a noisy crowd of guests. Everyone was dressed up and cheerful. In the center of the hall stood Irina Petrovna, radiant with happiness. Next to her stood Alexei, who turned slightly pale upon seeing Ksenia. Ksenia approached them and congratulated Irina Petrovna on her anniversary. "You look wonderful today," she said, looking her mother-in-law directly in the eyes. Irina Petrovna smiled gratefully. "Thank you, Ksenieshka. I'm so glad you came." At some point, Irina Petrovna decided to show off her new jewelry to the guests. "Look, what a magnificent necklace my dear son gave me. A real diamond. I always knew Alexei was the best," she declared, proudly displaying the adornment. At that very moment, as words of pride left her lips, her phone vibrated. A message. She frowned, but opened it anyway. On the phone screen, several files appeared. A bank statement, an audio recording of Alexei's conversation, Ksenia's medical certificate. Irina Petrovna turned pale. She tried to hide her shock, but it was too late. Several guests noticed her changed expression and stared at her with curiosity. In the next few minutes, the phones of other guests also began to vibrate. The same message. Statement, recording, certificate. Silence fell over the hall. The guests, stunned by what they saw, shifted their gaze from Irina Petrovna to Alexei and then to Ksenia, who stood aside with an inscrutable expression. The festive atmosphere vanished instantly. Instead of merriment and joy, tension and bewilderment hung in the air. Alexei, realizing what was happening, tried to smooth things over. "Mom, what nonsense is this? Who sent this? Don't pay attention. It's some kind of mistake," he stammered, trying to snatch the phone from his mother's hand. But it was too late. The truth had escaped and began to spread like wildfire. "How could you?" Irina Petrovna whispered, looking at her son with horror and disappointment. "How could you steal money from your own wife to buy me this?" she faltered, unable to find words to express her disgust. The guests began to whisper. Some openly condemned Alexei, others looked at Ksenia with sympathy. No one could believe what had happened. The celebration was hopelessly ruined. Ksenia, feeling her strength return, stepped forward. "Yes, Alexei stole the money I was saving for treatment," she said loudly and clearly. Looking directly into her husband's eyes, he chose to throw his mother a lavish anniversary celebration instead of helping me fight for my life. Alexei tried to justify himself, but his words sounded pathetic and unconvincing. "Ksyusha, I didn't mean to. You're just selfish, Alexei," Ksenia interrupted him. "You always put your mother's interests above mine. You were always afraid of her." Afraid to contradict her. "But you know what? I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not going to be silent anymore." She turned to the guests. "I know many of you are shocked. I know it's hard for you to believe what happened, but it's true, and I'm not going to hide it anymore. I want everyone to know who Alexei really is." After these words, Ksenia left the restaurant. She felt empty, but at the same time, free. She had finally told the truth. She had finally freed herself from the burden of lies and betrayal. But the story didn't end there. Society learned of the scandal. One of the guests leaked the information to social media. and the news of Alexei and his mother's betrayal quickly spread across the internet. People were outraged. They expressed their support for Ksenia and condemned the actions of Alexei and Irina Petrovna. Ksenia received many messages from strangers who sympathized with her situation and admired her courage. Many women wrote to her that they had faced similar betrayals themselves and that her story had inspired them to speak out too. Alexei and Irina Petrovna found themselves at the center of public condemnation. Their reputations were ruined. They lost the respect of friends and acquaintances. Alexei became an outcast. No one wanted anything to do with him. Ksenia, with the support of Dennis and Irina, filed a police report and for divorce. She was determined to hold Alexei accountable for his crime. She was no longer going to be a victim. She was going to fight for her rights and for her life. A long and difficult path lay ahead, but she knew she was not alone. She had friends who supported her. She had faith in herself, and she had hope that she could overcome her illness and start a new life, free from betrayal and lies. The bank promptly reacted to the situation, blocking all disputed transactions as soon as it received notification of the fraud and the commencement of legal proceedings. Irina, her lawyer friend, handled the case clearly and professionally, providing all necessary evidence. The court, having considered all the circumstances, ruled for the return of a significant portion of the stolen funds to Ksenia. It was not full compensation, but tangible support that allowed her to focus on treatment and recovery. Alexei, meanwhile, faced the consequences of his actions. The reputational scandal that erupted after the public revelation of his actions quickly reached his workplace. The company where he held a position could not afford to be associated with a person tainted by theft and betrayal. Under pressure from public opinion and negative media coverage, Alexei was fired. He lost not only his source of income, but also the respect of colleagues who had recently seen him as a successful and promising employee. Irina Petrovna, having lost her son's support and found herself at the center of universal condemnation, withdrew into herself. Former friends and acquaintances turned away from her, unwilling to associate with a woman whose craving for luxury had led to tragedy. She found herself in social isolation, mourning not so much the loss of money and reputation, but the destroyed relationship with her son and the lost respect of those around her. Ksenia, despite all the difficulties, continued to fight for her life. She underwent a course of treatment that proved to be arduous and exhausting. Dennis's support, who was by her side during the most difficult moments, helped her not to lose faith in herself and her strength. He accompanied her to treatments, cooked meals, took care of her, and was simply there when she needed to talk or be silent. As Ksenia recovered physically and emotionally, she began to think about how to live her life. She wanted not just to forget what had happened, but to learn lessons from the experience that could help other women in similar situations. One day, while sitting in a cafe with Dennis, she told him about her idea. "I think I'll start a blog," she said, stirring her coffee with a spoon. "I'll tell my story, share my experience, that is, support those who have experienced betrayal and illness." Dennis nodded approvingly. "That's an excellent idea, Shush. You have a wonderful writing style. You know how to express your thoughts and feelings, and most importantly, you can help other women not feel alone in their struggle." Ksenia smiled. "I don't know if I'll succeed," she admitted, "but I want to try. I want my voice to be heard." And she began to write. At first, they were small notes about her life, about fighting illness, about the betrayal she had endured. She wrote honestly and openly, not hiding her fears and doubts, but also not losing hope for the best. Gradually, an audience began to form around her blog. Women from all over the world read her stories, left comments, shared their experiences. Ksenia replied to every message, trying to support and inspire each of them. Soon, her blog became a real community where women could find support, understanding, and advice. Ksenia received hundreds of letters in which readers thanked her for her courage and honesty, for helping them find their voice and not be afraid to speak the truth. One day she received a letter from a woman who had supported her from the very beginning when Ksenia had just learned about her illness. "Ksenia," wrote Irina, I admire your strength and courage. You have not only survived betrayal and illness, you have managed to turn your experience into a source of inspiration for others. Your blog is a true miracle. It helps women find faith in themselves and not give up, even when it seems there is no way out. Xenia read these words with tears in her eyes. She realized that her voice was not just about revenge, it was a path to justice and a new life. She no longer felt like a victim. She had become a strong and independent woman who could help others find freedom and happiness. Xenia continued to write, share her experience, and support other women. She realized that her voice was her strength, her weapon, her way of changing the world for the better. One day, while sitting at her computer and working on a new article for her blog, Xenia felt Dennis approach her. He put his arms around her shoulders and kissed her temple. "I'm proud of you, Kshush," he said. "You're doing very important work." Xenia smiled and leaned against him. She knew that she had a reliable and loving person by her side who would always support her in any endeavor. She looked at the computer screen and continued to write. She knew that her voice would be heard by thousands of women who needed her support and inspiration, and she was not going to be silent. She was ready to speak the truth, share her experience, and help others find freedom and happiness. Her blog became her life, her mission, her way of changing the world, and she was happy. She realized that even after the most terrible trials, one can find the strength to live on, to love, to create, and to help others. The most important thing is not to be silent, not to be afraid to speak the truth, and to believe in yourself. Xenia closed her laptop and looked out the window. The bright sun was shining outside. Birds were chirping merrily. She breathed in the fresh air and smiled. A new life, full of opportunities and hope, awaited her. And she was ready for it. She was free.